welcome to our panel, Niche is the New Mainstream. And what we're looking at today is how we can use creativity to mobilize niche communities in order to leverage national attention. And keeping your attention today is this amazing panel we've assembled, the OGs of taking niche communities and giving them a platform in order to garner national and international attention, be they causal-led, be they campaign-led, or be they creator-led. But before we go on, it's important to clarify, what do we mean when we talk about niche communities? Well, a niche community is a specialized group of individuals who are bound by a common interest or purpose. Generally speaking, they have a high level of engagement and interaction because of this shared purpose which binds them together, okay? So that's how we refer to it. So today, what we want to do is look at these niche audiences and identify them and understand if we leverage them with creativity, how can they in turn influence up? How can they enter the mainstream by changing audience behavior at a national level? How can they steal disproportionate share of voice in order to talk about their cause or their mission or their purpose? So that's what we're looking at today. Now, why does any of this matter? Well, these guys are going to answer that, right? But I guess why it matters is because we live in this sort of fragmented media world where the audience is moving even further away from us. And in fact, the old rules of engagement are dead, right? All that matters now to cut through with your message is authenticity and relevance, something that niche communities have in abundance. So to contextualize this, so we all understand what we're talking about, here's some examples of some amazingly creative people who have identified niche audiences and have shone a light on them and used their platforms to hero these communities and bring them to mainstream. So, for instance, Martin Odell, Lagom chef, someone who made food waste sexy. He shoots videos in his kitchen at home. He's got 1.1 million followers on Instagram, and he calls himself a food disruptor. But who would have thought that food waste could be mainstream? He's brought it so. Francis Bourgeois, who I know that Tom from TikTok is going to talk about. Train spotting. No, not the film. Train spotting itself. Watching trains go through stations, right? He has made that cool. He's brought it mainstream. He's got 3 million followers on TikTok. He's got 2 million followers on Instagram. And he was snapped up by Gucci and North Face for their latest ad campaign. That's bringing something very, very niche into the mainstream. Likewise, has anyone here heard of Flock Together? Flock Together, anyone? Some nods, some no's, some yeses from the front row. Nice one, crew. So Flock Together is a bird-watching crew for people of colour. Bird-watching, how niche can you get? But these guys have basically established pockets, chapters right across the globe of people of colour who get together to watch birds, right? Amazing, amazing work, remarkable work. And lastly, Big Manny. Anyone heard of Big Manny? Big Manny is making Bunsen burners and the periodic table cool. Yes, it's chemistry. By his delivery and the way he breaks down what happens in chemistry, he has brought chemistry to the mainstream. None of us has done chemistry since GCSEs, right? But he's brought it to the masses, and it's amazing. So these are all examples of people who identified niches and put a spotlight on them and use their creativity and their platforms to bring it into the mainstream, which is what we're talking about today. Whatever your purpose, whatever your goal, whatever your mission. So, I'm Paul, lovely to meet you, founder of Hebe Dragons PR Agency. I'm delighted to be joined by this amazing team who are going to help us talk about why niche might or might not be the mainstream. I would love to take your questions as we have discourse. So Tom Rainsford, who is the marketing director of an amazing beer brand called Beavertown. You might have heard of them. I won't go into too much about their niche because I'd like Tom to explain that, but Tom, delighted to have you. Yvette, from Justice for Grenfell, someone who represents an amazing niche community standing up and fighting for justice, right? They're very purpose-led. And they are doing something which is necessary and never letting anyone forget what happened 6 years ago in West London. Tom from TikTok, who represents the creator economy platforms, right? He's going to talk to us about how creators have the opportunity to over-leverage their presence on his social platform, and Kim from Future Farm, which is the meat-free brand, and you might think that that's for vegans, right, and veganism, and Kim's going to help us understand that it's not. It's about having a balanced diet, it's about saving the planet and doing amazing things for both your body and the world we live in, and moving that very much from veganism into something which is more mainstream. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hi, Paul.
Okay, so I want to start by asking each of you what niche communities mean to you guys in your personal or professional capacity. Tom, I'll start with you, seeing you are closest to me.
Thanks, Paul. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. It's wonderful to see you all. I guess there's a couple of principles to establish, I think, when we talk about this, right? And I think historically, and it's still prevalent today, but I think it's diluting slightly, is this concept, particularly within business, and I'll come at this question from a business brand perspective, is that big is better than small. And I think that that isn't true, right? And actually what I think is very important about niche communities, if you like, or smaller communities, is there might not be many people, but they're very, very passionate, right? And that passion is very loud, right? And it's like, you can feel it. And that passion can turn into love, admiration, anger, whatever that community is representing. But it's the passion that makes it far bigger than the number of people that might be in it, right? And having worked on lots of different community models within different businesses and all the rest of it, it's always the passion that I think is most important, right? I think the other thing is that passion is infectious, right? And if there's something interesting going on out there, people start looking out the window rather than looking at us, right? Because it's interesting, there's something going on, it's got a buzz about it. And I think as human beings, that's interesting to us, actually. I think it radiates, it sort of pulls us in a little bit. If I relate the question more directly to the world of beer, and Beavertown is a brewery in Tottenham. We launched kind of 10 years ago, very much in that craft beer sort of bubble with lots of other, beer brands, craft beer brands. And I guess it was a niche community in regards to that just didn't exist in the UK at that time when we launched, and it became a thing. And now it isn't niche at all. It's in every pub down the high street, and it's in loads of shops around here and all the rest of it. So it's gone from being small and passionate into being large, but still passionate, like people care, right? But I don't need everyone to know what's in the pint that they're drinking, and I let you into the secret, I don't know, right? It doesn't matter how many people try to teach me the concept of brewing, I don't get it, right? It is not my thing, right? But I can still enjoy a pint of it, and that's okay. So it can go broader, and by going broader, you're just welcoming more people into that conversation. So to me, at the heart of everything about it is about passion.
Good answer. Yvette, over to you.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tom. It is about passion. I would say it's around emotion. And I know for us, it was just about we're niche in geographical space, really, is where we start from. But our message had to be, we needed to the more people we let know what had happened, the atrocity that had happened, where we were. And it is buying into almost a moral compass of what was right and what was wrong. But the most important thing was that it was never forgotten, and that it stayed in people's consciousness, and that they became emotionally attached to that, just on a human-to-human nature, that somehow many people would know how we felt. And most of all, people would buy into the justice aspect of that, as what do we see as fair and unfair in the world that we live in.
Well, I mean, on a platform like TikTok, where community is absolutely everything, and creativity is what drives those communities, we often say that there's every mainstream community out there would have started at some point as niche, but not necessarily every niche community is going to become mainstream. And some people are happy to sit and live within like a very small group, but back to that point of passion, it's that passion and creativity that makes them absolutely ultra engaged. And when we look at like expanding these communities, and we've seen everything from covens of witch top people, I don't know if we've got any in the house today, to some of the creators and individuals that then sparked, like through their passion, it was okay to say, I'm a train spotter. I'm not, but I absolutely love watching Francis's passion come through. And I think he gave people a place where they felt comfortable sharing, with others in that community and beyond. And then, that passion is what really helped break through into the mainstream. We were talking earlier about like how do you define mainstream as well? Can you put a number on it, or does it have to hit a certain criteria to be the mainstream? Maybe it is when then brands start embracing and taking it upon themselves and becoming part of that community as well. And I think that's a really positive move where we see brands embrace maybe what was always defined as outside of the norm or niche.
In my business, of course, vegan and vegetarians are very niche. It's only 60% of the UK's population, but they consume 50% of the plant-based market. So you imagine the impact that they have. But of course, the brand needs to expand to mainstream to continue to grow. So the challenge is to find a universal insight that connects your niche audience that is very passionate about your brand, but that resonates as well with a larger audience. So, for example, 25% of the UK population wants to decrease meat consumption because of health reasons or because they are concerned about climate change. Youngsters, more than 50%, are very concerned about climate change, so vegan meat, of course, plays a big role there. So what I encourage my team is let's never alienate our niche audience because they are very important. They really care about our products, but we need to find the universal insight to connect with the mainstream and make the brand grow even more.
Thank you, guys. Good answers. And you guys have, I mean this in the nicest possible way, been in this game for a while, right? You've all watched these communities grow and develop into something else. And as that growth happens across a period of time, how do you bring your community on a journey with you? And does that mean sometimes that you have to leave some people behind and adopt a new set of people who might believe in your brand, your mission? Or can you bring everyone on the gravy train with you and all is good? How does that work, Tom?
I think there's probably a couple of things in that. I think, so before I was the marketing director of Beavertown, I was one of the founders and the brand director of GiftGaff, the mobile network. And that whole thing was around creating a community of people that help each other out, right? Like that was a business proposition. It was about David versus Goliath and changing the mobile network and all that kind of good stuff. So I guess there, as with Beavertown to a degree, but it's sort of less baked in, it's more about the market rather than us specifically, is there's a principle to it, right? And the principle there was, this is the mobile network run by you, right? So therefore, ultimately, we are running this together. We are participating within the construct of this business and how it runs. And part of the reason we did that is it's really hard to get away from it when you're paying loads of money to put it on the middle of ITV, like on The Voice, right? So you kind of have to do it now you've said it. So ultimately, we kind of had to deliver against it. Now, our point, whether or not we had 10 people or 10,000 or 1 million or whatever it is now, as long as you stay true to your values, the size thing doesn't matter, right? So to my point earlier, the construct of size is equated to the value of business. Well, ultimately, it doesn't really matter because transparency is really important now more than ever. And people look for a level of synergy with their own value set, right? So you tend to buy businesses that share a value set, buy from businesses that share the value set that you share. When businesses do dumb shit, it tends to be because they're not delivering against the values that you've bought into as a consumer of that business, right? or you don't agree with the values and you have to use the product, right? Let's not talk about petrol and oil and those sorts of things, right? We have to kind of use it, but we don't really want to do it, and all the rest of it. So to answer the question directly, you have to stay true to that original concept of those values. The other problem is, if you don't know what your values are when you start, you will not know what they are on day 10 or year 10 or year 100, right? So you have to identify and be true to those original values of why you exist. And if you don't have any values, as a business, don't exist. This world does not need more businesses, right? It needs less, and it needs good ones and specific ones, right? So be true to that value set, and it doesn't matter whether you've got 10 people or 1 million people. And if it's cool and interesting and relevant, or you believe in it and you're passionate about it, people will join you,
Thank you, Tom. Yvette, same to you. I guess 6 years ago, on June the 14th, there was a atrocity in West London. There was a huge outpouring of grief and that moment of support across London, nationwide and globally. And many people rallied behind the community then. Have you seen that continue to propel itself and grow as a mission, where it has collected as a community more people, or have you seen it diminish in its numbers? How has that worked across that 6-year period?
I think it sort of balances in the middle. So I think we've seen a huge amount of support external to the community, but there's been a lot of small p politics around the local community, and, well, big term politics in the way that, government will buy people off. They have a history of dividing and ruling communities like ours anyway, so that can be hard to manoeuvre. Throwing money into the area and almost making kind of people fight over it. But I still think there is a core sense in the community, and it is around that passion and emotion, that what happened there is wrong. So although it's kind of splintering a bit, I think that core thing holds us together.
Yeah.
And you're getting, young people. I mean, my daughter's with me today. She was 9 when she stood at the bottom of the tower. And I think they take it over in a different way, and will retell the story for generations to come. And I think that emotion and that passion will go on. Every school, every primary school in the area lost at least one child in the fire. And we always say, it's almost like 72 people, it's 2 classrooms that are just missing from our community. And I think that's what makes people buy in. And also as well, we see the tower every day of our lives.
Yeah.
And although it's covered now, we see that as almost synonymous with cover up. Some people say they'd rather just see the burnt out husk still there, because that pulls in the emotion more.
Yeah.
It's emotion. But I think for me, it's always been, and it's something my father always said to us, stand up for something, otherwise you fall for anything. So I agree with Tom there about, setting that kind of
value set,
justice thing from the beginning. Otherwise you don't know where you're going later on. It's the value that you hold to.
Yeah. And Tom, on TikTok, is set up as a platform, right, to allow people to reach other people via the algorithm or the amazing content they create. It's not appointment to view like some of the other platforms might be, or you have to come to someone's page in order to engage with their content. And as such, I guess content creators on your platform can grow disproportionately, right, at light speed if they're making amazing stuff, which many of them do. Over the course of their creator journeys, and I know that you guys invest quite a lot in that sort of creator economy and support them, how have you witnessed those creators, the nuances of their journey and how they've engaged their audiences from the initial outset of their career, and how that sort of changes? Because I assume that people, the amount of content you can put out is only exhaustive, right? At some point you either have to pivot or evolve as a content creator, and are they do they put an arm around their community and bring them with them on the journey, or do they take sharp pivots and go, you know what, I'm about this now? How have you witnessed the evolution of the community on TikTok so far as the creative economy goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of the creators is they probably don't start out thinking of it as a career. They think of it as a way to express creativity. I think when they then find their community, and like Yvette was saying as well, I think the real power of any community is when people come together, when they communicate, collaborate, and listen. When they're talking and listening to each other. And I think our creators and what we do as a brand and company as well is we listen to our creators, we listen to our users. There's feedback, and that then helps them grow. Maybe as communicators or communications as our business, we've sort of forgotten sometimes about actually having a two-way conversation. And definitely when I started, thanks for pointing out, I have been in the game a while. It was a very one-way street. You put out a message, and that was sort of mainstream because you said it was, and people would respond accordingly because they saw it on television. Now that community can grow and listen. It can learn and it can evolve. And the best creators that we've seen, and they've been true to themselves always. They've been building, whether it's music, and they've been using their community to help grow their lyrics, or if it's chefs, and they've been using actually their community to help steer their passion for vegan cooking. They've grown together, and I think through that they've become even more powerful because those people are cheering them on. They're behind them all the way. They're not doing it on their own. And then when there is that breakthrough moment, I think those people, when you just talked about them as a career, I think they're at that point where they're ready to break into the mainstream. They've got quite a polished, whether it's like a turn in comedy that is familiar because it's been built and they've practiced it, or a recipe set, or a certain musical style that they're confident with. Yeah, so the community builds confidence through creativity.
Yeah, so you totally took my next question actually, which was if a community actually exists, right, as in utopia as a autonomous organism, right? You set up or give the foundations towards the community, but it almost runs itself via collaboration and via cross-pollination. So Kim, to you, how have you witnessed your sort of Future Farm community? How have you seen them come together via campaigns you've done, or via the mere fact that you exist as a brand and as a product? Have you seen cross-pollination or amazing things done in the people who support your brand, be it on social or elsewhere?
I think the vegan community is very engaged, and every time there is a launch, they get super excited because they see the market evolving, and this is really good because it's not only about the food they eat, it's a value, a deep value that they have, that eating vegan food is better for the planet, better for your health. So the community really cheers and engages with us, but at the same time, I'm in a business that there's a lot of churn yearly in terms of consumers. So basically, we have like a 50% of like a very loyal base, and every year, 50% of my base goes to other brands, and I have to attract new consumers. So it's always a challenge, but a very interesting challenge to keep your loyal customers with you, engaging, but working to attract new ones to hopefully again. Growth is the game, especially when you are a startup. You need to keep growing so your business becomes sustainable.
Quick mic change. So this is all about identifying niche communities and understanding how, via creativity, they can reach a national, international audience. I'd like to ask you guys, what have you witnessed in your niche community, something that's happened that has just completely blown up, and you're like, wow, this has gone wild, I can't believe that's happened, be it a campaign or something you preordained or something that happened organically. But how have you witnessed something that you've been a part of, have you seen that just go completely mainstream for a niche community and it's really surprised you? I'm going to go to Yvette first.
I was just thinking, there's sort of two for me. So one was a few days after the fire, people were angry, rightly so. And we just thought they're going to see us as the usual stereotype, that we're just going to riot in the area and that. And so we flipped it and just said, look, everybody just come together and walk in silence. And we've kept that silent walk going up until now. Although I'm teetering on the edge now because I'm just like, I don't mind walking, but I really can't be silent anymore. But that kind of flipped it for them. A, it was unexpected. B, we knew that they would feel uncomfortable with that silence. And then the second thing that happens after that is they try and kind of target the campaign, calling us left-wing extremists. I don't know what's extreme about talking about 72 people that have been murdered in your community. But then we were approached with the idea of the 3 billboards that were taken around London, and that actually just blew it out the water. And then it was mentioned at the Oscars, then it was mentioned at the BAFTAs. So it just started to be mentioned in places that the government could no longer control. And for me, that really kind of set the campaign on a journey where they needed to watch us a little bit more. But they just felt that they couldn't control us in any way because they didn't know where we were going to pop up next.
And Tom, at TikTok, you must have seen various creators sort of blow up, explode onto the scene, and seen some that haven't as well, right? What's the formula? What's the formula for going from niche to mainstream? Give it to us now. What's the secret sauce?
You're asking me the $1 million question there, aren't you? I mean, obviously the algorithm finds what you're interested in, and it shifts quickly, and and that can be from activism to veganism. It finds your community and what you're interested in at that moment. Therefore, you can discover more, you can explore more, and if that's finding like-minded people to join a cause and create a community. I think there's consistency in some of the creators that we see. Everything we've talked about, and Yvette, especially that passion for a cause and people that care, and not letting a really important point ever go quiet or go silent. And I think the same for creators, be that if it's cause-based or on the absolute opposite side, like if it's comedy-based, they'll find their voice and keep at it creatively. And I think through the last couple of days, listening to some of the talks, like back to Tracy Emin this morning, and she, there was many points when she threw all of her art away, gave up, and then restarted. And I think that is the part of the creative journey, is never giving up, resetting, restarting, and just keep going. Like I think she said, she's never going to stop. She's not finished yet. And I think that goes for all of the the creators and the causes on the stage today as well.
Okay, so the formula, guys, is cause plus content equals fame. That's what Tom said. Okay, Tom, you have worked at loads of big brands with big campaigns and big media spend. In your esteemed career history, has there been some campaigns or ideas or creative executions where you've gone, oof, this isn't going to go anywhere, and then it's just surprised you? And likewise, is something you thought, oh, this is going to be brilliant, but it's just bombed? Probably not going to answer the second bit of the question, but...
I don't know about surprised, because I think, ultimately there's kind of there's 2 ways to sort of come at it, right? Which is like, brands spend money to advertise at people because people don't really like advertising, right? So you have to spend loads of money to talk at people to get them to like the product that you want them to then go and buy or do or whatever, right? So, and it works, right? So that's one thing. I think the point here is that I think brands that go beyond the concept of just top-of-mind advertising adds value to the conversation, right? And if I think about it in regards to communities or creativity or whatever, brands that give platforms to people that share the passion or share the value set, to my point earlier, the platform and ability to demonstrate their shared passion, that's when you're doing really interesting stuff, right? And that's far more interesting than advertising, which you've got to do because it works, right? But actually, if you can do stuff with communities by giving them a platform, and we did lots of stuff years ago on E4 and ITV and, you know, lots of stuff online on all the channels that you'd expect it to be on, and you hand over that space for people to create in it or say something or have a point of view or whatever it might be, that's interesting, right? Because ultimately, we just want to connect with people. We like it when people are passionate about stuff. You know, you mentioned Francois and trains and all the rest of it. I don't give a shit about trains. I don't even like going on them, right? But I still follow the guy, right? Because he's really passionate, and I'm like, yeah, wicked. I can feed off that, you know? So I think if you can give a platform to people that share your value set to do something good that adds more than just advertising, then that's good to me.
And Kim, similar question to you. If we viewed veganism or flexitarianism through the optics of being niche, I appreciate it's a large group of people who are making sensible choices about how they conduct their eating lifestyle, right? But again, it might not be the stats you gave us at the start. It might not be totally mainstream in the UK and globally. Do we see veganism? Do we see flexitarianism as becoming mainstream? Is that a brand mission for Future Farm? How does that look to you guys?
It's our mission, but we still have a long way to go. So nowadays, our challenge, and we face this challenge together, is how, when I'm telling a story or I have a new launch, I need to have a story with several layers. Because, for example, early this year, we were launching a new burger, which was high in protein, healthier, etc. This headline is only interesting for like vegan publications. Oh, Future Farm is launching a new vegan burger. But if I want to go to the mainstream channels, I need to add creativity. I need to add different layers to that story. So I'm making sure to connect with a larger audience. So that's when it comes a creativity, a creative idea that is very well connected with your strategy. That's our challenge, so we can push forward the category to grow and evolve.
Great, thank you. So I think we're going to be very happy to take some questions from the audience in one moment. Just one more question before we do so. Obviously, this is all about breaking through to the mainstream. We're disruptors. We want our campaigns and our actions to be effective and to affect behavior change amongst our target audience, whoever they may be. But sometimes, Yvette, I wanted to ask you actually, sometimes disruptive can mean pulling stunts or, you know, doing things in the street where no one's listening, so you have to do radical things, right, in order to get people to listen, right? Which is what the Grenfell community has done to mobilise itself over the course of the 6 years and done a fantastic job of it. When is it too much, right? When is it a bit, oof, that was a bit much? And I sort of reference some of the stuff, not that I completely agree with their cause, but Just Stop Oil, for instance, where it becomes really disruptive, where they're blocking motorways, where they're invading sports arenas, where they are perhaps defacing, use that term loosely, artworks across the globe. What's the balance between something which causes attention and is welcome versus something that, you know, you're losing your crowd here by overstepping the mark and doing something which is going to perhaps distance you from the community that you work on behalf of?
I'm just thinking, James Baldwin, I think, said about riots being the response of kind of people that were unheard and the voiceless. I think I would like to say possibly it goes too far when you end up in jail. But actually, if we look at where the government's going with their policy and legislation at the moment, they're actually doing everything to shut disruption down, where people pay the ultimate price. I'm a great believer in disruption because the way that, you know, complaint systems are set up, petitions for government, you need over 100,000 kind of signatures in order to get anywhere. So I think we're going to see disruption a lot more because that's the only way that we can rise up and be heard, and we refuse to be silent. So disruption all the way. And maybe we need to organise in a different way that when people do end up in jail, we've got people to get them out. We've got disruptive lawyers to get them off. Colston in Bristol.
And Tom, just come to you. Obviously, you see a lot of content. When do you pull the plug on something? When is the niche going too much into the mainstream that it maybe becomes offensive content to look at, or something you have to police in a way which is removing that content?
Obviously, as a platform like TikTok, is trust and safety is absolute paramount. Our users and their safety on the platform is what we care about beyond anything. Having that as a safe, inclusive space. I mean, I agree with disruption and definitely with brands. And when brands need to stand out, we always have to disrupt in the right, positive way. Like blending in doesn't work if you want to sell. Doing that in the right way. And I think that's where, niches can break into like the casting of creators, maybe again, back to when it was a very one-way street and, we were dictating which kind of people brands would show up. And now through diversity, inclusion, and, the absolute breadth of creators, we will always make it our paramount, to find and select people that really show a cross-section of our user base. And if that's showing skincare or beauty, but through like the trans community, or just breaking the stereotypes down where maybe the mainstream would have always defined that that's not what you're going to see, and that in will always disrupt because maybe people hadn't seen it until that point, and then like it's much more accepted and included now.
And Kim, same question to you. I guess Future Farm lives at the crux between environmental and food, and veganism, e.g., as a collection of people are very mobilised, very organised, be it PETA or people who are Greenpeace trying to protect the environment. Where do you, as a brand owner, draw the line over what is bold and what is too bold, so far as how Future Farm pushes its message to the masses?
I need going back to Tom's point. It's very important that we are true to our values. So when it comes to the environment, we need to be there, and we need to be a brand that stands for something, because we are doing it not to only disrupt the food business, but because we care about the environment and we want a better world. And that's why people are so attracted to our brand. We are a brand that was founded in 2019, so we are not an established business. We have fresh ideas about that. So Just Stop Oil, for example, it's the first time I saw it, I was shocked. But at the same time, I put in perspective, in 50 years, when climate change, the consequences will be so much harder, how are you going to look back and see it? Oh, they were desperately trying to say something important to us, and even doing that kind of thing, we didn't hear. So I don't know, it's a tough one, but when you put in perspective of the consequences that we are facing, you see how disruption is important to make a change.
And Tom, you're no stranger to some difficult conversations with the ASA over some of the campaigns that you've been put out. Tell us where the line sits for you. I seem to remember a particular instance with a telecoms brand who...
Yeah, I think the worst misgross use of advertising they'd seen, I think, was the opening sentence on the piece of paper, which I was quite proud of. I guess the point here, regardless of what it is you're being disruptive about, is that disruption needs a point, right? It needs to have a point. And the point around disruption is, once you've got that point, people can disagree or agree, but it's still a point, right? Just kicking shares over because you want to kick shares over is disruptive, but it's not. It doesn't have a point to it. So I think if you've got a point, then be disruptive in a way that you think is appropriate to the point you want to make, right? And we can agree or disagree with what people do or don't do, but ultimately they're doing what they think is right to get the point that they want to get across in a disruptive way. And we can agree or ultimately disagree, but it has to have a point. It has to be disruption with a point.
Amazing. Yes, hello, question. Hi, can we get a microphone over to this lady over here, please? Thank you.
thank you for today. It was great. So my favourite T-shirt that I don't always wear because of circumstance is Catherine Hamnett's Make Trouble, and in really small it says Ask Questions. Okay, so when being a disruptor, the most amount of questions I've asked this year are through freedom of information. And when it comes to niche, it's all to do with niche thinking, niche point of view. We all have niche PTSDs, okay? So one of my last freedom of information questions was asking around the obvious, okay? And I asked RBKC in their newsletters and in all their social media, did they advertise Steve McQueen's Grenfell at the Serpentine? To which they answered me, yes and yes. And I went, well, actually, I asked the staff at the Serpentine and they said that the council didn't come. So I want evidence-based answers here, to which I know I'm legally allowed through the ICO. And if they don't give me the answers, they get into trouble themselves. But they're probably thinking, why the hell am I sending that question? I now live in Margate, okay? I couldn't get a train. I booked a ticket to go to that exhibition 4 times. And it wasn't for the distance, it was for the reason I couldn't get there. Because they don't know, one of my best friends committed suicide in Connection, Tim Burke, who was one of the first people to organise the volunteers commit suicide. And his story was validated in The Guardian, in The Observer. Like, even Rachel Johnson said that his funeral was like Diana's, but Diana didn't have a member of The Clash, and, you know, someone from Benidorm, and, like, you know, like, in terms of validation, these big, I see, okay, in terms of PTSD, niche PTSD, I look at that screen behind you. I see the green of the Grenfell heart and I see our BKC colour. I actually chose I lived next door to here, so I went and got changed. I thought, would I upset Yvette by wearing this colour? Because to me, this colour represents our BKC Council. But I also wear my Gilbert and George Hope, which I bought years ago. Okay, so when it comes to it, I think it's disruption, calling these corporations like RBKC to account, because right now that council has written, we're a whole new council, we're a whole new blah, blah, blah. I've got stuff on them now. I'm about to put a complaint in, because I also own land in RBKC, to something they did to me that shows 6 years later, 5 years after Tim's death, that it's all talk, it's all media gumph, right? It's media lip service. But they need to be called to account, okay? And there's not enough creatives on these councils, okay? I've worked at Saatchi before. I've also I did a month living in the Amazon rainforest. I know about PTSD. I've got experience in advertising. It's all, we're not sold by wishy-washy, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of when it comes to recognition and validation, it's beyond the obvious. Like, being a disruptor with a point, it's getting those points, and I know I can go on for ages, so I apologise, but it's getting those points across in ways that are not just easily swept aside. The amount of times they might have said about all those families and stuff, this is why they're cacking themselves this October, because they know they initially probably came out with the quote saying ambulance chasers about the insurance and stuff, and that's the reality. But that's why the creatives, that's why Tracy Emin here today is making such a stand for those that live in this vicinity. And that's like, you know, it's a mouthpiece for much bigger stuff. There isn't niche. Niche is just the start.
Thank you for your brilliant and valuable comments. I guess, Yvette, you're someone who has hit brick walls, right? Across the 6 years, people not listening, and the lady's valuable points, I guess, around, you know, the activism needed via creatives to ensure that stuff is kept on the lips of the national conversation, is not forgotten, right? Grenfell, hopefully not, could turn into another Hillsborough, right? Because no one is paying attention, no one is listening, and no one is being held culpable for these crimes. But yeah, we're going to take another question thank you for your comments, that was great, thank you. This lady here, thank you.
It's for Yvette as well, and it ties into what you were saying. It's lovely to meet you in particular. There are a whole bunch of us that follow Justice for Grenfell through social. That's the main way I support the campaign. So my question to you really in particular is, what can your community do for you? Do we just keep following and sharing and engaging? Because I think, things will pop up and we do still care. I'm an ex-Londoner as well now, living down here. And, it still hits hard. It will always hit hard. And I think the people that were initially engaged, we're still engaged. And I think the frustration is, what more can we do? Is there anything else we can do? Or just to reassure you that we are still here and we are still listening. So yeah, if there's anything we can do for you in terms of your community, what you need from your community, here for it.
I'm going to start over here first. I was actually at Tim's funeral. And what people perhaps need to know more of is the lead up to Grenfell. So Grenfell doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in one of the richest boroughs in the country. And there was a north-south divide in the borough. So North Kensington, they didn't care about, leading up to the fire, they had refurbished an estate, moved everybody off, promised them that they would come back. They only moved 25% of those people back, destroying a community. We also saw kind of ethnic cleansing around that in terms of the types of people they moved back. They were shutting down our local library. They were shutting down our further education college. They shut down one of the best nurseries for childcare in the area. And they were not listening to the people that lived in Grenfell Tower, the former tenants, who were saying to them the refurbishment was going wrong. And they only put the flammable cladding on the tower to make it look pretty for the south of the borough. Purely aesthetic, nothing to do with the refurbishment of that building. So we were already going through PTSD at the time because nobody was listening to us, and there was willful neglect for our part of the borough. And we always say, at best, it was some kind of hate crime. At best, they were just indifferent to our lives. They just didn't care about us, and that's why you get, majority black and brown people, working class people living in that building, that they were just shoved there. And interestingly, those are the three things that the public inquiry has chosen not to look at. So they are not looking at race, they're not looking at class, and they're not looking at social housing. So we can't see any change coming out of that. And we've had quite a few suicides after the fire where people just couldn't cope anymore. And that won't be part and parcel of the inquiry either. The local authority, they're all caught up in this. They literally do not care. And have a wider government. And I've had governments of several colours. It's not just a Tory government that's seen things through, the Public Inquiry Act was changed under Tony Blair. So, but it was the safest Tory seat in Britain. Interestingly, 5 days before the fire, we returned our first Labour MP ever. So that will be happening in many communities up and down the country. So it's kind of looking out for what is happening in your community. In terms of support, I know Thanet down here used to do a vigil every 14 in support of us, and we've got footage. For us, keep following the campaign online. We're increasingly becoming more of an online kind of campaign. But also, when things come up in Parliament, you will have issues here with social housing, with homelessness that is increasing, with people going to food banks. We can see what's happening at the moment. You know, we've got a broken NHS. Find out what your MP, how your MP is voting on those things in Parliament, and just send them a small note. Just say, got my eye on you. How are your local councillors functioning? You know, that's another disruption that we do. We go down to our council meetings if we see something on the agenda that's going to be discussed. We just go in there, make a lot of noise, and just say, we don't care if it's number 9 on the agenda. We've come to discuss number 9, and we've come to discuss it now. We just disrupt their meetings till they abandon them. So keep the disruption going. Write to your MP, write to your local council, and follow us online.
Thanks, Yvette. Any further questions? Yes. Oh, we'll do this lady in the pink hair at the back. Thank you. Sorry. No, I don't think it's on.
I do want to take this mainstream. Like, I want to do these big campaigns so that we're raising awareness, but also I'm then putting this niche community out there for comment and for people to have any kind of opinions on. And like, where's the balance, and what do you do to like mitigate that emotional risk, I guess?
In protecting communities?
Yes.
I mean, do you mean a particular community or just in general? I mean,
well, I think we've talked about the fact that communities are passionate and that they have a core value.
Yep.
And I assume in wanting to take that mainstream, it's because you want other people to like see the value in that value. You want other people to kind of agree and get on board. But there are going to be disagreements, like Just Stop Oil. I imagine people now having a problem with some of their tactics then affects the whole argument around the value of environmentalism, which then affects other communities. So I'm just really thinking, like, when I'm working with a niche community and I'm like, right, this has a mission statement and we want to take it bigger, how can I make sure I'm still protecting those people when they are going to be up to like public opinion?
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear as well, it's not the platform that's pushing them into the mainstream. It is the communities and the users, you know, like the choice, and it's through what's like entertaining, engaging, and educational that's actually pushing these into the forefront, or through individual personalities. And you know, through our duty of care and trust and safety, you know, we'll be, you know, protecting the communities or the individuals through like any kind of messaging or any kind of direct attacks, and our robust safety systems like that. But I mean, I think when you talk about like how to engage these communities, and Yvette touched on, I actually worked at the agency that did the Free Billboards piece, and you know, I think reimagining and rebringing to the attention through an idea, you know, and that is why we're here through creativity, is to, you know, make sure that we're, you know, either attaching ideas to new concepts. You know, I think that tapped into culture and Hollywood in a brilliant way, that it just brought it to the attention of people who maybe hadn't considered it before, or, you know, maybe hadn't been reading the same sort of magazines or on the same sort of social platforms. So like the power of an idea is always what can push things back into, you know, public consciousness. And, you know, I think that's where community, power and idea all come together. And then, of course, you know, then the protection pieces are in there to ensure that everyone is still having like a joyful and entertaining time.
So you don't stop. Sorry, just an answer. You don't stop hate speech. So if somebody says
mean, in place on TikTok is that if it's direct hate speech, of course we stop it. We also have freedom of speech and opinions. So, if people have opinions, then, that someone might not like them, but actually we are advocates of free speech. So,
hate speech on there, as it directly, when they come from niche and they become a bit more public, they get directed quite a lot of very negative stuff. And I just wonder that, as a platform provider, it's saying what you can do. And I get free speech is important.
yeah.
But why the talk about a niche enough and then getting attacked? Is there anything you can do to help?
I mean, I think all of the things are in place to try to stop that as much as possible. I suppose what you're talking about is like where we touched on where and at what point does mainstream become, numbers. Obviously, if there's more visibilities for people, there's going to be more people that may have comments, but we'll do whatever we can to stop those. And if they do become hate speech, then of course they're not part of our platform.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we are very out of time. No, sorry, we do have to cut it because we've got people coming in here. Thank you so much to our panelists. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for joining us. They will be hanging around if you've got questions.